A royal guard intercepted a gift meant for Kate Middleton. What the X-ray revealed left him shaken. The guard arrived early that morning, as he always did. The sky above London was still pale, the air cool and quiet. He adjusted his uniform with practiced hands and took his place at the security checkpoint near one of the royal residences. For him, duty was not about excitement. It was about focus, patience, and routine. Most days passed without anything worth remembering. That was exactly how he liked it. He had served for many years, long enough to know that calm days were a sign that systems were working. He had seen crowds, ceremonies, and moments of history from a careful distance. He had also seen how small details could matter. Training had taught him one lesson above all others: never rush, never assume, and never ignore instinct. As the morning progressed, deliveries began to arrive. Letters, official documents, flowers, and carefully wrapped gifts were common. Many people from around the world sent tokens of respect to the royal family. Each item followed the same path: check the label, verify the sender if possible, record the delivery, and send it through screening. It was a slow process, but a necessary one. Late in the morning, a medium-sized package was brought in by a courier. Nothing about it seemed unusual at first glance. It was wrapped neatly in brown paper, tied with simple string, and addressed politely. The name written on the label was for the Princess of Wales. The message was respectful, even warm, as if written by someone who truly admired her. The guard took the package and placed it on the counter. He read the label carefully. The handwriting was clear and calm, not rushed or messy. There was no sign of anger or odd wording. The return address was listed, though it appeared to be from a general area rather than a specific person. That alone was not uncommon. Many senders preferred privacy. Still, something made him pause. He could not explain it clearly, even to himself. It was not fear. It was more like a quiet sense of caution. He lifted the package gently and felt its weight. It was heavier than he expected for what the label described. Not extremely heavy, but just enough to stand out to someone who handled packages every day. He told himself not to overthink. People often misjudged weight when sending gifts. Some added extra padding, others included items they forgot to mention. The guard placed the package in the logbook and followed the next step in procedure. Routine mattered. Every step mattered. Around him, the security area remained calm. Other guards worked silently, exchanging only short, necessary words. There was no tension in the air, no raised voices, no alarms. It was just another day. That thought should have reassured him, but instead it sharpened his attention. As he prepared the package for screening, he checked the documentation again. The description of the contents was brief and simple. According to the sender, it was a small personal gift, something symbolic. The wording was polite but vague. That was not unusual either, yet combined with the weight, it made him stop for a moment longer. He remembered his training officer from years ago, a stern man who believed in discipline and patience. "If something makes you pause," the officer had said, "pause properly. Don't rush past that feeling." The guard had carried those words with him throughout his career. He placed the package on the conveyor for scanning. This step was standard, even for items that seemed harmless. Nothing was sent forward without being checked. As the machine warmed up, the guard stood beside the screen, ready to glance over the image and move on. While waiting, his mind wandered briefly. He thought about how many people never saw this side of royal life. They saw ceremonies and smiles, but not the quiet layers of protection behind every moment. He did not think of himself as important. He thought of himself as part of a system, one link in a long chain. The scan began and shapes slowly formed on the screen. At first he expected to see something simple. Maybe fabric, maybe a book, maybe a small ornament. He leaned slightly closer, narrowing his eyes. The image did not look like fabric. It did not look like paper or wood either. He felt his body stiffen, though his face remained calm. Inside the package were shapes that appeared structured and precise. They were not random. They were placed carefully, layered in a way that suggested planning. The guard had seen enough scans to know the difference between clutter and design. He did not react outwardly. Years of discipline kept his movements steady. He watched the screen again, letting the image cycle. The shapes remained the same. His heart beat a little faster, but his breathing stayed even. Panic would help no one. He did not yet know what the objects were. He did not need to know. What mattered was that they did not match the description provided. That alone was enough to slow everything down. He reached for the phone beside the scanner and quietly contacted his supervisor. His voice was calm, professional, and low. He reported exactly what he saw without guessing or exaggerating. The supervisor listened and responded with a simple instruction: stop the process and secure the area. The guard followed the order immediately. He shut down the conveyor and marked the package for further review. Nearby guards adjusted their positions subtly, as trained. No one raised their voice. No one caused alarm. To an outsider, it would have looked like nothing more than routine movement. As they waited for the next step, the guard stood beside the package. He felt a strange mix of emotions. There was concern, of course, but also a sense of clarity. This was why he was here. This was the reason for all the long hours, the strict rules, the careful routines. He thought briefly about the princess. He had seen her only from a distance during official events. To him, she was not just a public figure. She was a person with a family, a life, and responsibilities. The idea that something questionable could have reached her weighed heavily on him, even if the risk had already been stopped. Minutes passed slowly. Specialists were on their way. The guard remained at his post, eyes alert, mind steady. He reminded himself that he had done nothing extraordinary. He had simply followed procedure. Still, he could not ignore the feeling that this moment would stay with him. As the room stayed quiet, he reflected on how easily the package could have gone unnoticed. A different guard, a busier moment, a rushed decision, any of those could have changed the outcome. The thought made him even more certain that caution was never a weakness. When the supervisor arrived, they exchanged a brief look. No words were needed. The situation was clear. The package would not move forward until experts examined it fully. The guard stepped back, allowing the next phase of security to begin. He did not know yet what the final outcome would be. He did not know who sent the package or why. All he knew was that something had been stopped before it could go any further. For him, that was enough. As the day continued, the guard remained on duty. The sun climbed higher and the rhythm of the shift returned. Other deliveries arrived. Other tasks demanded attention. Outwardly, everything went on as normal. Inside, however, the guard felt changed in a small but lasting way. The ordinary shift he had expected had quietly become something else, a reminder that even the calmest days required full attention. A reminder that vigilance was not about fear, but about care. And though he did not yet realize it, this was only the beginning of a story that would leave a deeper mark than he could imagine. After the package was secured, the guard stepped aside, but his attention never left it. Even though he had followed procedure many times before, this moment felt different. The room was quiet, yet his thoughts were loud. He replayed the scan image in his mind again and again, trying to understand why it had unsettled him so deeply. The supervisor instructed him to document everything carefully. The time, the courier's details, the exact wording on the label, and his own observations were all written down. The guard's handwriting was neat and steady. Years of service had taught him to keep emotions out of reports. Facts mattered more than feelings. Soon, a small team trained for deeper inspection arrived. They moved with calm confidence, wearing protective gear and speaking in low voices. There was no rush, but there was also no delay. Each step followed a clear order. The guard watched from a short distance, ready to answer questions if needed. One of the specialists asked him to describe exactly what caught his attention. The guard explained simply. He spoke about the weight, the vague description, and the shapes on the scan that did not match expectations. He did not exaggerate. He did not guess. He only shared what he knew for sure. The specialist nodded, showing quiet approval. "You did the right thing," he said. Those words stayed with the guard, even though they were spoken softly and without ceremony. The package was moved to a controlled area for closer examination. No one touched it directly without the proper tools. The guard noticed how carefully it was handled, as if even the smallest mistake could matter. Watching this process reminded him why training never truly ended in this line of work. As time passed, the guard was asked to return to his regular position. Other duties awaited him, and the security operation continued smoothly. Still, his mind remained tied to that single package. Every now and then, his eyes drifted toward the restricted area, even though he knew there was nothing more he could do. Later in the afternoon, the supervisor called him into a small office. The atmosphere was serious but calm. The supervisor closed the door and spoke in a measured tone. He explained that the package contained hidden components that were not immediately dangerous but were concerning enough to trigger a full investigation. The guard listened closely. He did not interrupt. He felt a strange mix of relief and concern. Relief that no one was harmed. Concern because the situation had been deliberate. Someone had taken time and effort to hide something inside a gift meant for a highly protected individual. The supervisor made it clear that the princess had never been in danger. The layers of security had worked exactly as intended. Still, the incident would be reviewed carefully. The origin of the package would be traced and procedures would be examined once more. The guard nodded. He felt proud of the system, but also humbled by how close such situations could come without anyone outside ever knowing. He was reminded that much of his work would never be seen or recognized, and that was how it should be. After the meeting, he returned to duty. The rest of the shift passed without incident. Couriers came and went. Packages were scanned and cleared. The routine returned, but the meaning behind it felt deeper now. As evening approached, the guard finally had a moment to breathe. He stood near the entrance, watching the sky darken. Lights began to glow softly around the grounds. Everything looked peaceful. Anyone passing by would have assumed it had been an uneventful day. He thought about how easily people trusted systems they never saw. How they assumed safety simply existed. In reality, it was built moment by people who paid attention to small details. When his shift ended, the guard changed out of his uniform and prepared to leave. Normally, he would head straight home, eager for rest. That night, however, his steps were slower. His mind was still busy. On the train ride home, he replayed the day. He wondered about the sender of the package. What had they intended? Did they believe it would go unnoticed? Did they underestimate the process or the people behind it? He reminded himself not to speculate. That was not his role. His responsibility had ended the moment he followed protocol. Still, the questions lingered quietly. At home, he tried to relax. He made a simple meal and sat by the window. The city outside moved as always, unaware of how close an unusual situation had come to touching a public figure's life. He realized that this separation between danger and normal life was exactly what security aimed to preserve. Before going to bed, he received a short message from work. It thanked him for his professionalism and attention to detail. No praise, no dramatic words, just acknowledgement. He appreciated that more than anything else. As he lay in bed, sleep came slowly. His thoughts drifted between routine and responsibility. He understood now more than ever that every shift mattered, even the quiet ones, especially the quiet ones. The next morning, he returned to work as usual. He put on his uniform, straightened his posture, and stepped back into his role. The package incident was already being handled by higher authorities. His job was to continue doing what he always did. Still, something inside him had shifted. He felt more alert, more aware of how thin the line could be between safe and unsafe. It did not make him fearful. It made him focused. As he took his position, another delivery arrived. He reached for it calmly, just as he had hundreds of times before. To anyone watching, he looked exactly the same. But inside, he carried a quiet reminder from the day before, that attention, patience, and instinct were not just rules on paper. They were tools that could make all the difference. And though the investigation was far from over, one truth was already clear. What seemed like an ordinary gift had revealed something much larger. Something that would continue to unfold, step by careful step, in the days ahead. The following days passed quietly on the surface, but beneath that calm, careful work was happening. The guard returned to his duties each morning, following the same routines, greeting the same colleagues, checking the same deliveries. Yet he could feel that something important was unfolding beyond his direct view. The secured package had started a process much larger than himself. He was not told many details at first. That was normal. Information was shared only when necessary. Still, small signs appeared. Extra checks were added to delivery schedules. New faces appeared in certain areas, people who spoke little but observed everything. The guard understood what this meant. The situation was being taken seriously. One afternoon, he was asked to attend a short review session. It was held in a plain room with no windows, just a table and a few chairs. A senior official spoke calmly, explaining that the package contained carefully hidden components designed to avoid casual detection. They were not harmful by themselves, but their presence raised serious concerns. The guard listened without expression. He felt a steady weight settle in his chest. The fact that the items were not immediately dangerous brought relief, but it also confirmed something unsettling. The sender had put thought into hiding them. This was not random. It was intentional. The official thanked him again for his attention to detail. He explained that the X-ray image had been the key moment. Without it, the package might have passed further along the chain, even if it never reached its final destination. The guard nodded, understanding the importance of layered protection. After the session, he returned to his post. The day continued as usual, but he noticed how every movement now felt sharper. Every sound seemed clearer. It was not anxiety, it was awareness. Later that week, investigators requested a more detailed account from him. They asked about the courier's behavior, the timing of the delivery, and the condition of the package. The guard answered patiently. He described the courier as calm and professional, nothing unusual. That detail, too, was important. It suggested that the courier likely had no idea what they were carrying. As he spoke, the guard realized how often security depended on people who never knew the full story. Couriers, clerks, drivers, all playing small roles without realizing the larger picture. That thought stayed with him. The investigation expanded quietly. Authorities traced the package's path back through distribution centers and sorting facilities. Each step revealed how easily the package had blended in with thousands of others. That was perhaps the most unsettling part. It had not stood out until the final stage. The guard was informed that the princess had been briefed in a general way. She was assured that the situation was under control and that safety measures had worked as intended. Her schedule was never disrupted. Public life continued without any sign that something unusual had occurred. This knowledge brought the guard a sense of pride. The goal of security was not drama or recognition. It was continuity. The fact that nothing had changed meant success. Still, the guard could not shake the image of the X-ray screen. The shapes, the careful arrangement, the quiet warning they carried. He understood now why training emphasized imagination, not to assume danger but to consider possibility. One evening, as his shift neared its end, a colleague asked him quietly how he was holding up. The guard offered a small smile and said he was fine. That was the truth, but there was more beneath it, a deeper respect for his role and for the responsibility it carried. At home, he began paying more attention to everyday details. The way doors closed, the sound of footsteps, the pattern of traffic outside his window. He realized that awareness was not something you turned on only at work. It shaped how you moved through the world. A few days later, he was informed that the investigation had identified the sender. It was not a person with a public history or clear motive. The address had been deliberately vague, the trail thin. Authorities believed the intent was to test systems rather than cause harm. Even so, the seriousness of the act could not be ignored. The guard felt a quiet anger at that idea. Treating safety as something to test felt careless and disrespectful. Yet he also felt reassurance. The system had held. He was asked if he felt comfortable continuing his duties. The question surprised him. Of course he was. This experience had not shaken his confidence. It had strengthened it. As the days turned into a week, procedures were reviewed and refined. Small changes were introduced, nothing dramatic but enough to close gaps. The guard took part in a refresher session, sharing his experience with newer team members. He spoke plainly, emphasizing instinct and patience. "You don't need to be suspicious of everything," he told them, "but you do need to notice when something doesn't fit." His words were simple, but they carried weight. He could see it in their expressions. The incident began to fade from daily conversation, as such things often do. New tasks replaced old concerns. Still, the guard knew it would stay with him, not as fear but as a reminder. One morning, as he scanned another package, he felt a familiar pause. The weight was normal. The label was clear. The scan showed exactly what it should. He let it pass without hesitation. That balance between caution and confidence was what experience taught. As he stood there, he thought about how close the unusual package had come to being just another delivery. How a single moment of attention had changed its path. He realized that such moments happened everywhere, every day, often unnoticed. The guard did not see himself as a hero. He never had. He saw himself as someone who did his job properly. Yet he understood now that quiet professionalism could have far-reaching effects. When he left work that day, the city felt the same as always. People hurried past, lost in their own lives. None of them knew about the package, the scan, or the careful hands that stopped it from going further. That invisibility was part of the job. As he walked home, the guard felt a steady sense of purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he would meet them the same way he always had, with patience, attention, and respect for the responsibility he carried. And as the investigation moved toward its final stages, one thing was already certain. The experience had left him more grounded, more aware, and more committed than ever. The story was not over yet, but its meaning was already clear. The review process continued quietly, but its effects reached deeper into daily routines. The guard noticed changes almost immediately. Entry times were adjusted by a few minutes. Delivery windows were narrowed. Checklists were updated with small but important additions. None of these changes slowed the work, but they sharpened it. Every action now had an extra layer of care. The guard welcomed these changes. They did not feel like pressure. They felt like progress. Experience had taught him that systems only stayed strong when they were tested and improved. What mattered was learning from moments like this, not ignoring them. One morning, he was asked to assist during a controlled training exercise. It was based on real events, including the intercepted package, though details were altered for safety. New guards were asked to observe, discuss, and practice decision-making. The guard stood quietly at first, watching how others approached the task. When it was his turn to speak, he kept his words simple. He explained how routine could become a strength if paired with attention. He described how instinct did not come from fear but from familiarity. The room listened closely. He could tell that his calm tone carried more weight than dramatic words ever could. After the session, a younger guard approached him. The guard thanked him for sharing his experience and admitted that he sometimes worried about making the wrong call. The senior guard smiled gently and said that hesitation was not failure. Ignoring hesitation was. Those words stayed with the younger guard, just as old advice had stayed with him years earlier. The chain of learning continued. Meanwhile, the investigation reached its final stages. Authorities confirmed that the package had been designed to look harmless while hiding items that raised concern. The sender's intent was still unclear, but there was no evidence of immediate harm planned. Still, the seriousness of the act was not minimized. The guard was informed that the case would be documented as an example of successful procedure. No names would be shared publicly. No announcements would be made. The goal was improvement, not attention. He appreciated that decision. Quiet work deserved quiet conclusions. As days passed, the tension that had lingered in the background slowly eased. The extra personnel rotated out. The pace returned to its usual rhythm, yet something remained different. The guard felt more connected to his role than ever before. He found himself reflecting more often about trust, about responsibility, about how safety depended not on one person but on many people doing small things correctly. The idea gave him comfort. One evening, during a calm shift, he stood near the gate as soft rain began to fall. The sound was gentle, steady. He watched the drops hit the ground and thought about how protection worked much the same way. Layer upon layer, quiet but effective. A delivery arrived, delayed slightly by the weather. The guard received it, checked the label, and followed the steps without rush. Everything was in order. He sent it forward and moved on. No pause this time, no concern, just confidence built on experience. Later, the supervisor stopped by briefly. He thanked the guard again, this time for how he had handled the weeks after the incident. Not everyone adjusted easily to added scrutiny, but the guard had remained steady. The words were simple, but they mattered. At home, life continued normally. He spent time with family, enjoyed simple meals, and rested when he could. He did not speak about his work in detail. He never had. Still, he felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that his efforts helped protect not just a person, but a sense of normal life. One weekend, he took a long walk through a nearby park. Families laughed, children played, and people moved freely without worry. He observed it all with a thoughtful expression. This was what security aimed to protect, not buildings or titles, but moments like these. As he watched, he realized something important. The true measure of his work was not the incidents that happened, but the countless ones that did not. The peaceful scenes around him were proof enough. Back at work the following week, a small ceremony was held internally. Nothing formal, just a brief gathering where leadership thanked the team for their dedication. The guard stood among his colleagues, feeling a strong sense of belonging. He did not need applause. Shared respect was enough. The incident was now officially closed. Reports were filed, lessons recorded, and improvements made. Life moved forward. Yet the guard carried the experience with him, not as a burden but as a guide. He noticed how his confidence now came with greater patience. He no longer rushed decisions, even small ones. He trusted his judgment but also respected the process more deeply. One afternoon, while scanning items, he noticed a new guard watching closely. The guard caught his eye and nodded slightly. The senior guard returned the nod. No words were needed. Understanding passed quietly between them. As his shift ended that day, he paused for a moment before leaving. He looked back at the checkpoint, the machines, the desks, and the quiet order of it all. This place had seen countless moments that would never be known to the outside world. He stepped out into the evening feeling calm and resolved. Whatever came next, He knew he would face it the same way he had faced everything else, with care, with attention, with respect for the duty he carried. The experience had not changed who he was, it had clarified it. And as the story moved toward its final chapter, one truth remained steady. Quiet vigilance, practiced every day, had the power to protect lives without ever asking for recognition. Time moved forward as it always did. The days after the case closed felt lighter, but also more meaningful. The guard returned fully to routine, yet the routine no longer felt empty. Each action carried purpose. Each check reminded him why patience and focus mattered so much. He noticed that his instincts had grown sharper, not tense, just clearer. He no longer questioned that quiet inner pause when something felt slightly off. He trusted it, just as he trusted training and procedure. Experience had shaped him gently, not through fear, but through understanding. One morning, the supervisor called him in again. This time, there was no concern in his voice, only calm respect. He informed the guard that the higher authorities had completed their final review. The incident would be used as a training reference across multiple security teams. The guard's role would remain anonymous, but his actions would quietly influence how others worked. The guard accepted this news with a nod. He had never expected recognition. Knowing that his decision might help prevent future risks was more than enough. As he left the office, he felt a sense of closure. The story that began with a single package had reached its natural end. Nothing dramatic, no public moment, just understanding and growth. That afternoon, he stood at his post watching visitors pass at a distance. Some smiled. Some hurried, most never noticed him at all. He did not mind. Being unseen meant things were working. He thought again about the princess, about how her life, like so many others, depended on systems and people she might never meet. He felt no pride in that thought, only responsibility. Protection was not about power, it was about care. During a quiet moment, a young guard asked him a simple question. "Do you ever get tired of the same routine?" The guard smiled slightly and answered honestly. "Routine is what keeps us ready. The moment it feels boring is the moment we must pay closer attention." The young guard nodded, thoughtful. Another small lesson passed on. Weeks turned into months. The memory of the intercepted package softened but never disappeared. It became part of the guard's inner reference, a reminder of why he chose this work and why he stayed. Outside of work, life felt richer in small ways. He appreciated calm mornings more deeply. He listened more carefully when people spoke. He understood that peace was not accidental. It was built quietly, step by step. One evening, while heading home, he saw a news report playing on a public screen. It showed the princess attending an event, smiling warmly, engaging with people. The report spoke of hope, service, and unity. Nothing about security, nothing about danger. The guard paused briefly and watched. He felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that safety allowed moments like that to happen naturally. He continued walking, blending back into the crowd. At home, he reflected on how easily the world could change if small details were ignored, and how easily it stayed stable when those details were respected. That balance fascinated him more than ever. As time passed, new challenges came and went. None stood out like that one package, but all demanded the same level of care. The guard met each day with steady focus, neither overconfident nor uncertain. One morning, he was assigned to help update training materials. He reviewed notes, images, and examples. When he reached the section describing the importance of weight, shape, and instinct, he paused. He added a short sentence, simple and clear. "If something feels slightly wrong, slow down and look again." It was not dramatic, but it was true. On his final review of the materials, he felt a quiet pride, not in himself, but in the process, in the way experience became knowledge and knowledge became shared strength. Years later, he would still remember that day clearly. Not because it was frightening, but because it showed how ordinary actions could carry great importance. A pause, a second look, a decision to follow procedure. As his career continued, he never lost sight of that lesson, and he noticed something else too. Others around him grew more confident, more careful, more united. The culture strengthened. On a peaceful afternoon, standing once again at the gate, the guard felt completely at ease. The sounds around him were familiar, the rhythm of work steady. The world beyond the walls moved freely. He understood now that true security was not loud or forceful. It was patient. It was thoughtful. It was human. The story that began with a single gift ended not with fear but with trust. Trust in training. Trust in instinct. Trust in people quietly doing their duty every day. And though no one outside would ever know his name or his role, the guard knew something important. He had done exactly what was needed, at exactly the right moment. That knowledge stayed with him, calm and steady, as he continued his watch, protecting life not through action alone, but through constant care. The end was not an ending at all. It was simply the continuation of responsibility, carried forward with quiet strength.